Dr. Lear's grandfather, while studying to become a rabbi, secretly read from the Talmud and the Kabbalah esoteric scripture forbidden to anyone but the holiest of men, emphasized, quote, that the nature of this life was not the way it appeared, including religious belief. He told me that the essence of what we were taught about life and spirit was incorrect. My grandfather also stressed his belief in something I never forgot. We are not alone in the universe. End quote. Welcome to the Grouse and Gazer channel. My name is Klaus, and I'll be your host and narrator for this video. We'll be exploring Dr. Roger Lear's book, The Aliens and the Scalpel.
So in attending one of these conferences, I met an individual who had some x-rays of a foot with what he claimed were alien implants. And I thought this was the funniest thing I ever heard. So I turned around and walked away. And a friend of mine was there who insisted, besides that she was female, and when a female insists, you listen. So I went back and looked at the x-rays again. And to make a long story short, I said, well, if you think these are anything other but some ordinary objects that either people step on or leftovers from a foot surgery, then why don't you just take them out and see what they are? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, actually, she would like to have that done. But unfortunately, she doesn't have any medical insurance and she doesn't have any money to pay for the surgery. So I said, well, where does she live? And he said, in Texas. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. You get her to California and I'll do the surgery free. Mind you, I did not believe these were alien implants. To me, the biggest possibility, I thought they were leftovers from a foot surgery.
You certainly changed your mind after reading the results of the tissue analysis and metallurgical report from the University of Houston. One could say the results were out of this world. We'll let the audience know those results when you explain why you feel you have the smoking gun of ufology. But first, let's examine your resume for credibility. You don't give yourself enough credit in your interviews. In 1961, you achieved a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Southern California and San Fernando Valley College. In 1964, you achieved the title of Doctor of Podiatric Medicine from the California College of Podiatric Medicine. Plus, you completed an additional year of surgical training. Plus, you honed your skill working with senior foot surgeons in a multitude of Southern California hospitals. You became podiatric director of the residency training at Simi Valley Doctors Hospital for 3 years. Next, you became the chief of the diabetic foot clinic at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in Hollywood. Now you started a private practice. Several years later, you became a contributing author for MUFON's Ventura Santa Barbara's newsletter, reporting on MUFON events. Later, you became an advisor to the board and medical consultant. Finally, you got involved in implant research and presented your findings at the National MUFON Symposium in Greensboro, North Carolina, and many other symposiums. In addition to lecturing, you were interviewed for radio, television, and print medias. You even networked with other medical practitioners interested in extracting foreign objects. You were very thorough with your operation procedures. You had witnesses, handpicked a surgical team to have the extrications run smoothly, and even had a videographer to record the procedures. The surrounding tissues and extracted objects went to various laboratories for a double-blind analysis. Thank you very much for your patience. Showing the credibility of the author is just as important as his story. What I understood from Dr. Lear's history was that he was committed to establishing scientific evidence to prove extraterrestrial visitation exists. What do you think of Dr. Lear? Please leave your comments. Now, let's get to his smoking gun.
Biologically, there's no portal of entry to where any of these objects go in, or that when you remove the tissue that's around them, there's no inflammatory reaction or rejection reaction. Now, how in the heck are you going to get a piece of something in you and not have the body react? It doesn't happen. So that's just the biological stuff. But then when we look at the metal stuff, we have noted labs like New Mexico Tech and Los Alamos and SEAL Labs and York Laboratories and Toronto University and on and on and on.
These objects have come back with what differences that define them as not earthly?
Good question. Now, one of the things we found in the object that we had there, as well as the other ones, is that they are highly magnetic. You figure, well, okay, not much unusual about that. But then when we do a test called X-ray diffraction, we find that the iron is amorphous. That means it has no crystalline form. Now, that must be some sort of enigma, because when you have all these black budget scientists that are crowded into a little room looking at this stuff, wondering how amorphous metal can become magnetic, and the director of the laboratory is standing out in the hall with his hands on his hip and the nastiest look on his face that he could ever give you. You better believe that if secret science doesn't know how to do it, we don't know how to do it. 12th surgery. This case was in the foot, and the first X-rays I saw were 2 years ago, and it was in the third toe, and it looked the same as 4 of the other objects that I removed. In fact, it was exactly the same length. It was a little rod, a little metallic rod, about 6 millimeters in length and about the thickness of a pencil lead. Before we do the surgery, we want to make sure the thing is there and it's where it was, when I first did it. So I take an X-ray right before I do the surgery. And unfortunately, this thing had worked its way up into a joint and had fractured into 3 pieces. So I said, oh, boy, when it's in 3 pieces, it's going to be harder to get out when it's just one. So we use a Gauss meter, and it puts out an electromagnetic field of 4 milligauss.
Really?
Then we used a radio frequency detector, and I wish you'd have been there because, it has a small antenna. You point it to the third toe, and it locks on 30.012732 megahertz.
Dr. Lear, you didn't mention many of your other findings that you described in your book. Good thing UNX News had listed them. You discovered specialized nerve endings had surrounded the implant. In essence, the implant had attached itself to the host's nerves. You were unable to cut the implant with your scalpel because of a ceramic biological coating. In fact, one implant had to be cut with a laser. The implant itself was made of meteoric iron, and this meteoric iron had rare earth metals such as U-236 and iridium. We do not use these isotopic ratios that you had discovered. The implants also had micro-nano strands on them, and embedded in the strands were micro gold spheres. You discovered that there were metallic caverns no larger than 1 atom on the implants. You used an electron microscope to observe unknown structures on the implants. And lastly, you discovered an abundance of sodium chloride orthorhombic crystals. These same crystals are used in crystal radio sets. Wow, your discoveries are out of this world. You provided an observation. Let me read it for the audience. 18 separate and distinctive objects had been removed from individuals who allege alien abduction. Only one of these objects were of an earthly origin, which was a piece of crystal-like glass produced in low numbers by Dow Corning Glass Company. All the others showed multiple quantities of non-terrestrial origin. The last three cases, surgeries 15, 16, and 17, were by far the most interesting cases from a scientific point of view. This because of the scientific equipment had advanced to the point where more could be learned about the non-terrestrial aspects. Personally, I think patient 10 was your most interesting case because you had to chase the implant around under the patient's skin. The only way you could catch it was to trap it with your thumb and index finger and then push it out of your incision. Well, there you have it. A practicing podiatrist with an interest in UFOs removes 18 foreign objects from abductees' bodies. One of those foreign objects was a piece of glass, while the remaining 17 objects were of unknown origin. Dr. Lear's opinion reflects reputable laboratories throughout the United States. These laboratories completed their testing like a double-blind experiment, meaning that they were given the objects without their history. In essence, here is an unknown object, tell me what it is and what is it made of. The results came back as, here is the analysis we did and we don't know what the object is. Thank you for watching. Please leave your comments, and if you found the video interesting, be sure to click the like button and don't forget to subscribe.